So I'm here in Washington, D.C. to produce a video of a doctor who works at the World Bank, and his job is he travels around the world trying to help alleviate poverty and health disparities. Pretty noble job, and I'm pretty excited about telling his story. So I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to share how I go about preparing for an interview, the preparation that goes into it, and the conducting of the interview itself. If you've never done an interview, hopefully you'll find this helpful, and if you've done interviews before, maybe you'll learn something new. So step one is pretty obvious, but it certainly bears repeating, and that is know what your client wants. So if I'm doing a personality profile, which I am in this case, I get as much biographical information about the person as I can. I get a copy of their CV if they have it, any stories that have been written about the person, and any information that my client can tell me. So step two is I set up a time to conduct an informal phone interview with the subject, and I have some basic questions that I want to ask based on my conversation with my client. At that point, I have a pretty good idea what the story is going to be about, but new things will always pop up in the informal phone conversation, and that will help me fine-tune my questions when we sit down for the formal interview. Another great benefit of doing the informal phone interview is it really gives me a sense of the person's personality. Are they a fast talker? Are they a long-winded talker? Do they stutter a lot? Do they say a lot? This really gives me insight into how I will need to coach them when we actually sit down for the formal interview. Step three is I will refine the questions that I want to ask based on my phone conversation, and I will send the questions to the subject in advance. I want them to be comfortable with the questions. I want them to be prepared to know how they want to answer the questions. I'm not a gotcha journalist. I'm not trying to catch people in a lie. I want them to give honest answers. And if they know the questions in advance, they can take the time to think about how they want to respond. Step four is the interview itself. Now, I'm a one-man show, and I don't have the luxury of having a camera operator, a sound person, a lighting person, so it's just me. It's just the nature of my job. So that really affords me a really good benefit, and that is it allows me to establish a really good rapport and intimacy with the subject that I'm interviewing. Now, if a client says to me, "Can I sit in on the interview?" I will, as politely as I can, say, "Hell no." And there are two reasons for this. The first reason is I don't want the subject being distracted. I did allow this one time, and I learned a valuable lesson. The subject kept glancing from me to the other person, back to me, and I had to keep reminding them, no, you need to look at me. And the person who I let in the room actually interrupted the subject in the middle of a very powerful response and say, "Oh my God, that's so sad." It's like, totally ruin the clip. And the second reason is what I said earlier. I really want to establish intimacy with them. I want them to be relaxed. And if there are other people around, it's just that much harder for them to relax. How I try to get them to relax is as soon as I walk in the door, I'm positive, have a smile, I'm not nervous. That's important that you also are not nervous. And then I try to strike a conversation that has nothing to do with why we are there, nothing about the subject. So, I'll observe what's going on around. Do I notice he has any hobbies? Are there any interesting paintings or photographs on the wall? And I may say something like, "Hey, that is a really cool photo. Did you take it?" As long as you can keep the person relaxed and knowing that you are non-threatening, the better your interview will be. So one of the first things I always do when I sit down for an interview is I remind the subject that this is video, and they have the freedom to stop and start over as many times as they need to. And that's important. It helps them to relax, just knowing that I'm not out there to try to make them look foolish. And it gives me the opportunity to get the best answer possible. So I don't know how this happened, but my home state of Vermont and my current state of North Carolina wound up side by side at the World War II Memorial. So the World War II Memorial has always been my favorite memorial, and not just because it's the biggest, which I believe it is. It's obviously magnificent, it's huge, and rightfully so. But my dad fought in World War II. He was at D-Day. He also fought in the Korean War. So this place really is special in that when I'm here, I'm reminded of the incredible sacrifice that my dad made, and all veterans who fought in World War II. And it's just, it's very powerful. Also very important when doing an interview, maintain eye contact with your subject. It'll help them relax and let them know that you're engaged and interested in what they're saying. You don't want to be fidgeting around with equipment and whatnot, or looking off into space. Now, as a one-man show, I'm also operating the camera, so occasionally I have to just glance at my monitor to make sure that the camera's still running. But I usually do this when there's a pause between questions, or if the person is looking down or looking up in a thoughtful manner, I'll just do a quick glance to make sure that that little red light is still blinking. So another thing you want to make sure you do when you're interviewing is take notes. Now, you can still maintain eye contact and jot some things down, but this may they may prompt other questions that you want to ask, so you can either ask them right away or come back to them later. I am losing my light and it is starting to rain, so I've got to take shelter quickly. Unfortunately, I can't finish my walk of the entire National Mall. So unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to finish my walk. I wanted to make it all the way to the Capitol, but it started raining and I wasn't able to do that. And there are a couple of other tips that I want to share with you. The first one is that, yes, sometimes it is okay to interrupt your subject during an answer. If they are just incredibly long-winded and not getting to the point, or if they've already answered the question, it is okay to say, "Excuse me, I think I've got enough for this question. Let's move on." And the last tip is probably one of the most important, and that is, for your final question, always ask this: is there anything else you'd like to talk about that we didn't cover? And the reason for this is, at that point, they know that the interview is over, and you can almost sometimes see them take a sigh of relief. I mean, nobody is used to having a camera stuck in their face. Most people aren't used to that. So when the interview's over, they're relaxed. And a lot of times they'll either say, "Well, yeah, maybe there is something," and they'll give you maybe the best quote of the entire interview. I always finish with a little acknowledgement. I'll say, "Thank you very much. You did a great job." Even if they didn't, I want them to leave with a positive feeling about that experience. So those are the basics of how I prepare for and conduct an interview. I'm not going into how to light for an interview and equipment setup with multiple cameras and that sort of thing. I might save that for another video, or there are plenty of videos on YouTube of how to set up three-point lighting and multiple cameras. But I hope you found this informative. If you've never conducted an interview before, these things are important to keep in mind. Most important, just make sure that you're relaxed and prepared. When you go in, you want to have the confidence to know exactly what you're going to do. That will set your subject at ease, make them more comfortable, and you will definitely get better responses. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.